My name is Mason Hart. I'm 23, and while most people my age are figuring out life, I've been paying the bills at my parents' house just to keep the lights on. They like to pretend they're the ones holding this family together, but I'm the only reason the heat doesn't get shut off in the middle of an Ohio winter. I've always felt like the outsider in my own home, useful but unwanted, loved only as long as I stayed silent and paid what they couldn't. And on Christmas Day, I finally learned how little I really mattered to them. It turns out I wasn't family. I was just the last thing they had left to take. Christmas dinner was almost over when my dad put down his fork, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're a burden, Mason. You can't live here anymore." For a second I thought maybe I misheard him. Sharon, my mom, let out this weird nervous laugh like she was waiting for him to say he was kidding. But he didn't. He just sat there dead serious, waiting for a reaction. Emma froze beside me, her fork halfway to her mouth, eyes wide and glassy. I chewed the last bite of ham I'd been forcing down and placed my fork quietly on the plate. "What, you heard me?" Dennis didn't blink. "You've overstayed your welcome. It's time for you to go." The air in the dining room turned to ice. Sharon fiddled with her napkin, eyes darting between the table and the living room like she might run. Emma didn't move at all. She just kept staring at me like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Honestly, neither could I. I was 23, I had a full-time job at a parts warehouse down on Main. I paid the electric, the internet, and the groceries most weeks. I didn't live here because I was lazy. I stayed because they couldn't keep this place afloat without me. Dennis hadn't held a steady job since I graduated high school. Sharon worked a part-time cashier gig and still somehow came home every day like the world owed her something. I was the one holding the roof over their heads. But none of that mattered now. "Maybe we should talk about this later," Sharon said quietly, her voice fraying at the edges. Dennis didn't even look at her. "No, this is my house. I make the rules. He's done here." I leaned back in my chair, still trying to process how a man who hadn't paid a bill in 3 years could talk like this. My throat felt tight, but I wasn't going to give him the scene he wanted. I wasn't going to ask why or what brought this on, or if he really meant it. "Okay," I said. Dennis sat up straighter like he'd just won something. Sharon's face crumpled in on itself, her lips pressed tight. Maybe she thought I'd fight. Maybe she wanted me to. But she didn't say anything else. I stood up, picked up my plate, and carried it to the sink. Didn't look back. Didn't say another word. Emma was still watching me like her whole world had shifted an inch to the left, and she couldn't tell what was real anymore. I gave her a small nod, just enough to let her know I saw her, that I wasn't mad at her, that none of this was her fault. Behind me, Dennis took a sip of his whiskey and went right back to eating. Like throwing me out on Christmas was just a box to check off his to-do list. I went upstairs, shut the door to my room, and started packing. I didn't cry, I didn't rage or punch the wall. I just folded my clothes, zipped up my duffel bag, and logged into my bank account. I had enough saved to get me by for a while, maybe a few weeks, if I kept it tight. I'd figure it out. Maybe crash on someone's couch. I had options. They didn't. I could hear them downstairs. Sharon's voice was low, brittle. Dennis sounded smug. "He's old enough. He should have moved out years ago. We can handle it now." I almost laughed. Couldn't even pay for the turkey they were eating without my help, and suddenly they were ready to be independent. An hour passed. I was shoving my laptop charger into my bag when there was a soft knock at the door. Emma slipped in, her eyes read a crumpled tissue in her hand. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said. "But I'm leaving tomorrow." She looked stunned. "That's insane. You pay for everything. They can't even afford groceries without you. Not my problem anymore." She bit her lip, probably trying not to cry again. "Where are you gonna go? I'll figure it out." She stood there for a second, swaying like she wanted to ask something else. Then she said it anyway. "Can I?" I shook my head gently. "They'd never let you. You know that." She looked down at the floor and nodded. "Yeah." We stood in silence until she finally sighed, soft and sharp. "They're gonna regret this." I managed a tired smile. "I know, I didn't sleep much. Just laid on the mattress, eyes on the ceiling, while the cold Ohio wind scratched at the windows and the walls closed in around me. I kept thinking about all the years I'd carried them, all the ways I bent myself in half so they could feel whole. And for what? At 6 a.m., I got up, dressed, and dragged my duffel down the stairs. The house was still dark, silent. Outside, my breath fogged in the frozen air. I threw my stuff in the trunk, climbed into my car, and took one last look at the house. No sadness, no nostalgia, just relief. Then I pulled out my phone, logged into every utility account I had access to, and removed my name. Electric, internet, water, even the stupid Netflix account. By the end of the month, the place would be dark, dry, and silent. I smiled, put the car in drive, and didn't look back. If they wanted me gone, they'd get exactly what they asked for, every dark, shivering part of it. Trevor's apartment smelled like microwave burritos and dog shampoo, and the couch had a spring that stabbed me in the ribs every time I shifted. But it was warm, quiet, and no one called me a burden when I walked in the door. He'd barely asked any questions when I texted him the morning after Christmas. Just sent me an address and said, "Doors open, dogs weird. Come through." That's the kind of guy Trevor is, low maintenance, no pressure, but always ready when you need him. Max, his pit lab mix, sniffed my duffel and wouldn't stop staring at me while I unpacked the basics. Trevor handed me a chipped mug of coffee and plopped down on the other end of the couch. "You good?" I nodded, even though I wasn't. "I will be." He didn't push. That night, I lay on the couch staring at the water-stained ceiling while Max snored at my feet and Trevor's roommate played Call of Duty on full blast from the next room. It wasn't exactly peaceful, but it was safe. Nobody screamed, nobody blamed, nobody took. The next morning, I sat in Trevor's kitchen with my laptop open and logged into every account I'd once managed for the house. One by one, I removed my name. First, the electric set to disconnect in 5 days, then the water, then the internet. No forwarding address, no warnings. By noon, it was done. I leaned back, finished my coffee, and waited for the fallout. It didn't take long. 3 days later, my phone blew up. 7 missed calls from Sharon, 2 from Dennis, which was strange considering he hadn't called me in over a year, and a string of texts from Emma. "Emma, they're freaking out. Emma, power's out. Emma, mom's crying about the Wi-Fi. Emma, dad's blaming you." I stared at the screen, letting the buzz of satisfaction hum low in my chest. It wasn't revenge. Not really, it was just math. You don't pay the bills, the lights go out. Around 3 p.m., the calls started again. I ignored the first 3. But when Sharon called for the 4th time in under 10 minutes, I answered. Her voice hit me like a car crash. "Mason, we don't know what happened. The power's out, the internet's not working, the water bill?" "I stopped paying," I said flatly. There was a long silence. "You paid for these?" Her voice dropped like she couldn't quite believe it. I almost laughed. "Who else did you think was paying for them?" I could hear her breathing through the phone, heavy and uneven. "Your father said." "I know what he said." I didn't wait for her to try spinning it. Not my problem anymore. "Mason, please, we didn't mean." I hung up. Trevor glanced up from the kitchen where he was making a grilled cheese. "That the meltdown first wave," I said. "More's coming." And it did. The next morning, I got a fraud alert from my bank. Then 3 password reset attempts, then a failed login. I sat up in a panic and logged in manually. Nothing was missing yet, but the failed logins were all from Sharon's zip code. It didn't take a genius to guess who was behind it. I called Emma. She answered on the first ring, whispering like she was hiding in a closet. "I was just about to call you. Dad's freaking out. He's been on the computer all morning, trying to get into my account." Silence. "Yeah," she said finally. "He found Mom's old password notebook, the one she kept by the desktop. He's been trying everything. Jesus, I told her to stop him," she said, voice cracking, "but she won't. She keeps saying they're desperate. That it's not stealing if it's family." I wanted to punch a wall. "It is." Emma paused. I could hear Dennis yelling in the background, the sound of something crashing. Sharon crying again. Then Emma whispered something that froze my blood. "I think he's going to do something stupid." My heart dropped. "What do you mean he's saying you ruined everything? That you did this on purpose to screw him? He keeps pacing. Said you're not going to get away with it." I stood up already, logging into every account I had. "Lock your door. If he does anything crazy, call me. Or call the cops." I changed every password. Bank, email, Venmo, Netflix, even Amazon. Then I called the bank and asked them to lock my account with the manual code only I could provide. They flagged it immediately, said it was the right call. That night, Trevor and I were playing something dumb on his Xbox, neither of us really into it. I was finally starting to feel a little bit normal again. Then there was a bang at the door, loud, angry, deliberate. Trevor paused the game. "You expecting anyone? I already knew who it was." My stomach turned cold. I walked to the peephole. Dennis was outside, fists clenched, breathing like a bull. "Mason," Trevor said from behind me, voice low. "Who is it?" I didn't answer. Another bang, louder this time. "I know you're in there," Dennis bellowed. "Open the damn door." He kicked it once hard enough to rattle the frame. I stepped back, heart hammering, and pulled out my phone. He wasn't bluffing anymore. I held the phone to my ear with one hand and grabbed the doorknob with the other just to make sure it was locked. Dennis was still pounding on the other side, his voice rising with every hit. "You think you can just walk away? You think you can leave us in the dark?" Trevor stood behind me now, tense, his eyes flicking between me and the door. "Dude, is that your—" "My dad," I said. "Yeah." Another kick. The wood splintered just a little. 911. "What's your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "My dad just showed up at my apartment. He's yelling, trying to break in. I need help now." The dispatcher stayed calm. "We're sending officers to your location. Stay on the line. Do not open the door." Dennis shouted something else, but the words blurred together in a snarl. I could hear Sharon's voice behind him, quieter, more frantic, begging him to stop. Of course she came along. She always came along. Trevor leaned closer. "You want me to go outside?" "No. Stay here." I was done being the one who smoothed things over. I wasn't walking into this fire again. The banging stopped for a moment. Then Dennis slammed his fist one last time. "You owe us," he shouted, voice ragged. "We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us." I didn't say a word, just gripped the phone tighter and waited for the sirens. 2 minutes later, red and blue lights lit up the window. There was shouting, a knock. "Columbus Police, open up." I cracked the door. 2 officers stood in the hallway, flashlights drawn but relaxed. Behind them, Dennis was in cuffs, his face red and puffed with rage. Sharon stood a few feet away, arms crossed, mouthing something I didn't bother reading. When Dennis saw me, his face twisted. Not into sadness or regret, just hate. "You did this," he growled. I met his eyes, unflinching. "No, you did." The cops led him down the stairs. Sharon trailed behind her hand, brushing his shoulder like she thought that would fix anything. The door clicked shut. Trevor let out a breath like he'd been holding it the whole time. "Jesus," I nodded, still staring at the empty hallway. "Yeah." We stood there for a minute. Max barked once, then laid back down, unimpressed. Trevor shook his head. "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure. "I think so." He grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and handed me one. "I thought my family was screwed up," he said. I cracked mine open. "Mine's trying to break down doors." He nodded. "Yeah, you win." We sat in silence for a while, the TV playing something neither of us watched. I kept checking my phone, expecting another storm, but it stayed quiet for a few hours. Then Emma called. Her voice was a whisper again. "They just got back. Mom won't stop crying. Dad's yelling about pressing charges. Said you set him up." I laughed bitterly. "He tried to break into the apartment. He says you baited him, that it was a trap. That's ridiculous." Emma didn't disagree. "He's saying you ruined the family. Mom keeps saying it's all your fault, that you're tearing everything apart." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "They already did that themselves." "I know," she said quietly. "I think I've known for a long time." That hit me harder than anything Dennis said. "You okay?" Emma hesitated. "I don't know. I'm scared, Mason. He's not just angry, he's unhinged. He's pacing, talking to himself. I don't think he even knows what he's trying to do anymore." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Stay out of his way. Don't argue. Don't provoke him. Just keep your head down." She didn't respond right away. Then she said, "You know, you were the only one holding this place together, right?" "Yeah," I said. "I know that now." We hung up and I just sat there staring at the floor, beer going warm in my hand. Trevor looked over. "You ever think they might have been waiting for you to leave just so they could fall apart?" I shook my head. "I think they fell apart a long time ago. I was just duct tape." The apartment felt smaller that night, not cramped but tight, like everything I'd been holding in for years was finally pressing to the surface. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I just sat there while the pieces fell where they were always meant to. At midnight, I turned off my phone and tried to sleep. The quiet should have helped, but it didn't, because even with the door bolted, the lights off, and my family miles away, I couldn't stop hearing Emma's voice. "He's gone now," but she's not. She's doing something worse. The call came just after sunrise. Emma's name lit up my screen, and the second I answered, her voice came through low and tense. "She's selling your stuff." I sat up, the blankets pooling around my waist. "What, Mom?" "She took your laptop. Said she pawned it last night." I was already out of bed, adrenaline burning away the sleep. "She what?" She said we need the money, that since you don't live here anymore, anything you left behind is fair game. I was silent for a moment, trying to process it. Then I said, "That's theft." "I know," Emma whispered. "She doesn't care." Trevor was still asleep on the other side of the apartment, but Max lifted his head from the dog bed as I paced past. I grabbed my jacket and keys with shaking hands. "I'm coming over," I said. It wasn't a question. Emma exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all night. "Okay, I'll be up." The drive to my parents' house felt both too fast and too long. The streets were frosted, the sky still pink with early winter light. My fingers gripped the wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. I ran every scenario in my head, what I'd say, what I'd do, but none of it came close to the rage building in my chest. I pulled into the driveway, and something immediately felt off. My car was there, the one I'd left at Trevor's apartment. I slammed on the brakes and stared. It was unmistakable, same bumper sticker, same dent in the back left fender. And it had been moved. The front seat was pushed way back, and the glove box was open. I threw the car into park, jumped out, and marched up the porch steps. Before I could knock, the door yanked open. Sharon stood there, arms crossed over her sweater, face tight with indignation. No guilt, no shame, just that cold, self-righteous look she always wore when she was caught. "You called the cops on us," she said. "You stole my car. It was just sitting there. You weren't using it." I stared at her, stunned. "You broke into Trevor's place. We had the spare key," she said. Like that somehow made it okay. My voice dropped to something quiet and dangerous. "Give me my key. Now." She huffed, spun on her heel, and disappeared inside. Emma peeked out from behind the staircase, her expression half apology, half fear. I gave her a nod, just enough to say, "I see you. I'm not mad at you." Sharon returned and tossed the key at my chest. It bounced off and landed in the grass. "There," she said. "Happy?" "No," I said. "I'm not." I stepped inside, brushing past her. Emma followed as I headed for my old room. "She pawned your laptop 2 days ago. Said it was for food, but I saw her come home with a new purse." "Of course she did." I turned to Sharon, who was now watching from the hall, arms still crossed like she was daring me to push harder. "You sold my laptop." "We needed the money, Mason. You could have asked." She rolled her eyes. "You left. You walked away from this family." I pulled out my phone. "You're going to return it or I'm calling the cops." Her eyes flared. "Don't you dare." I hit 911. "Don't you dare call the police on me," she said. Stepping closer, "You stole from me," I said calmly. "That's not family, that's criminal." She didn't respond. Just stared at me like she couldn't believe I was serious. The dispatcher picked up. "Columbus Police, what's your emergency? I need to report stolen property," I said, never breaking eye contact. My mother admitted to pawning my laptop without my permission. Emma stood frozen, her eyes bouncing between us. Sharon's face cracked just for a moment, and her voice dropped to a hiss. "You can't do this. I'm your mother." I turned away from her. "Yes, officer, I have proof. My sister witnessed it." Sharon gasped like I'd physically struck her. Emma blinked fast, then found her voice. "He's not lying. She told me herself." "You little," Sharon started, but a knock at the door cut her off. 2 officers stood outside. I let them in without a word. Sharon's confidence evaporated the moment they asked if she had a receipt from the pawn shop. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her hands trembled. Emma stayed quiet. Within minutes, the officers had her outside. She was shouting, crying, begging. "It's a misunderstanding. He's my son." He left all that stuff behind. I didn't move. I just watched her from the window as they put her in the back seat. Emma stood beside me, small and silent. "Is this really happening?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah. And it's not over yet." Because the moment I looked at my phone again, I saw a new text from an unknown number. "You're going to regret this." My stomach dropped. I didn't have to ask who it was from. Dennis was out. The message sat there on my screen like it was burning a hole through the glass. "You're going to regret this. Dennis." No doubt in my mind. I stared at it for a full minute before locking my phone and slipping it into my pocket. Outside, the police car pulled away with Sharon still sobbing in the back seat, her face smeared with tears and whatever makeup she'd bothered to put on that morning. Emma stood on the porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was holding her ribs in place. "He got out?" she asked. I nodded. "Someone bailed him." She looked down at her feet, quiet. "What's he gonna do? I don't know. But I'm not gonna wait around to find out." We stood in silence for a few seconds. The wind picked up sharp and cold, slicing between us. I need to get the rest of my stuff, I said. Emma stepped aside and opened the door. I'll help. Inside, the house felt different. Not just empty, vacant, like something had finally been cut loose. I moved quickly, grabbing the last of my boxes from the closet, some old jackets, and the box of video games I'd almost forgotten I had. Emma carried a shoebox of cords and chargers, placing it next to the others, like she was setting down something fragile. I found this too, she said, holding up a small black notebook. I froze. Mom's password book. Emma nodded. It was under her side of the mattress. Of course it was. Probably how Dennis had tried to get into my bank account the week before. Keep it, I said. Might be useful. 10 minutes later, everything that belonged to me was back in my car. I looked at the house one last time. There was no emotion left in me for it. No memories trying to hold on. Just drywall and wood and years I'd never get back. Sharon's car was still in the driveway. I debated taking the keys out of it just to be safe, but let it go. As I reached for the door handle, Emma stood beside me, tugging at her sleeve. I don't want to stay here. I know, I said. You've only got 2 years left. She didn't say anything. Her eyes were glassy. I'll check in every day, I said. If anything happens, anything, you call me, all right, she nodded. Then headlights flared at the end of the street. A car turned the corner. My stomach dropped. It was Dennis. His truck crawled toward the house, mud splashed up the side's front bumper, still dented from a fight he'd had with a mailbox 2 winters ago. Get inside, I told Emma, low and sharp. She hesitated. Now, Em. She ran up the porch steps just as Dennis pulled into the driveway. He barely had the truck in park before he was out and moving toward me, jaw tight, fists clenched. You proud of yourself? He snarled. You happy now I didn't move? Just stood my ground by the driver's side door. You get my wife arrested. You turn my daughter against me. You think you're some kind of hero. You broke into my place. You tried to hack my bank account. She stole from me. He laughed short and sharp like it hurt his throat. You think you're better than us? I opened the car doors slowly, keeping my eyes on him. I don't think it. I stepped inside. I know I am. He took a step forward. I could see it, he was teetering. That edge where rage turned physical. I rolled the window down just enough. You come near me again, Dennis. I'm filing a restraining order. You so much as look at me sideways, I'll press charges for everything. His face twisted, red, furious, but there was something else behind it too. Hesitation, fear. You're nothing, he hissed. You're just a spoiled little... I didn't wait for the rest. I put the car in reverse and backed into the street. He stood in the driveway, hands balled, shoulders heaving, while I turned and pulled away. I didn't speed off. I didn't flip him off. I just drove, and I didn't look back. By the time I reached the end of the block, the house was gone from view. The weight on my chest wasn't gone, but it had cracked, just enough for me to breathe. I glanced at my rearview mirror one last time. Empty street, no one following, not this time. I drove straight to Trevor's place, parked in front, and exhaled. Inside, Max was barking at a squirrel on the balcony, and Trevor was halfway through a sandwich. You get it all? He asked. Yeah, he studied me. You look like someone just closed the door on a burning building, not far off. He nodded, quiet. Then so, what now? I sat down on the couch, still holding the car keys. Now, I said. Now I wait for the smoke to clear. 2 winters passed. The apartment I lived in now wasn't big. Just a 1-bedroom in a quiet building on the edge of Worthington near the freeway. But it was mine. The walls were bare, the furniture mismatched, and the heat clanked like it was held together by hope. But it was quiet and safe, and no one screamed through the walls or threatened to break the door down when the bills came due. I had a steady job at a distribution center across town. Nothing glamorous, just steady hours, decent pay, and no one asking for anything more than I signed up for. Most days I came home, kicked off my boots, and watched the world go dim out the window while dinner warmed up in the oven. Sometimes Trevor came by. Sometimes I went to his place for a beer and to watch Max act like the world's biggest lapdog. We didn't talk about the past much. He never asked, and I didn't feel the need to fill the silence. I hadn't heard from Sharon or Dennis in over a year. Not directly, anyway. They'd tried at first. Facebook messages from fake accounts, random numbers texting things like, "You'll regret this," or "Family is forever." I blocked everyone, changed my number, locked down every account. Anything with my name I scrubbed clean. The last I'd heard through Emma was that the house was gone foreclosed when they couldn't keep up with the bills. They'd bounced around between relatives until those bridges burned too. Eventually, they ended up in a dingy apartment on the east side, the kind of place you kept your windows locked and your head down. I didn't care, not because I was bitter, but because I had nothing left to give them. Emma made it out. She kept her head down just like she promised. Focused on school, took on a job at a coffee shop to save up money, and the second she turned 18, she packed her bags and walked out without a word. She stayed with a friend for a while, then got a small scholarship and started at community college downtown. We talked all the time. She called me when she got her first paycheck, texted me when she aced her biology final, sent me pictures of her dorm room, her messy notebooks, the iced coffee she basically lived on. She was doing it. I kept her old texts saved in a folder on my phone, just in case I ever started to forget what survival looked like. It was a Sunday afternoon when a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address, my name in shaky handwriting. I stood there holding it for a long time. I already knew. I didn't open it. I dropped it straight in the trash, locked the door behind me, and went back to frying eggs. Later that week, another message came through, this time to an old email account I forgot I even had. Subject line, please. I deleted it without reading a single word. Some stories need closure, others just need distance. I chose distance. The day Emma came to visit, it was snowing lightly, the flakes barely clinging to the windshield as she climbed out of the car in a too-thin jacket and a giant knit scarf. I opened the door before she knocked. You got taller, I said. She rolled her eyes. You say that every time. She dropped her bag on the floor and looked around the apartment. It's nice. It's small. It's quiet, she said. That's better. We made grilled cheese and watched bad TV for a while. The kind of night we never got to have growing up. No one shouted from another room. No one slammed a door. No one threw anything. When she was curled up on the couch half asleep, she said, You saved me, you know. I shook my head. You saved yourself. She smiled, eyes closing. Only because you showed me how. Later, after she'd gone to bed, I stood by the window and watched the snow fall. It was the kind of quiet that felt earned. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of peace. My phone buzzed on the counter, a number I didn't recognize. Again. I walked over, stared at the screen. One new message. I didn't open it. I blocked the number, set the phone down, and turned off the light. Some stories end with forgiveness, but mine ends with freedom.